Good morning.
who is here to discuss the vicissitudes of the. Yeah,
The
that's what
$2 $2 word.
Okay, now we're live on Facebook or YouTube, the YouTube channel, and he's live here. And now I'm going to put us live on that little camera.
Great.
And
is that for TikTok?
no, we're going live on Facebook on mine too.
Okay.
I got 5,000 viewers on or 5,000 associates on Facebook. I only have
Want to say hi to Mike?
181 on YouTube, but I use the views are what's important
Right.
more than subscribers. Hey, good morning. We're live on Facebook here. We've got some very important guests besides Marshall Barber from the Glass Houses studio. And well, say hi. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Joan Wagner.
Good morning. I'm Patrick Schmidt. I'm a candidate in the Kansas 19th State Senate District Democratic primary.
Let's ask first a question. What is the 19th district? It's not a new district?
This is a largely new district. Every 10 years in Kansas, they redraw the maps. Unfortunately, in 2022, when they finalized this map, Republicans held a supermajority. So it was largely only Republicans that drew this map and were able to override any potential veto from the governor. And when they did that in an effort to consolidate their power in the legislature and their power in the distribution of seats and districts in both the House and Senate, they reduced the Democratic districts in the Kansas Senate by at least one seat. And in doing so, they shifted the 19th from what was largely a Shawnee County-based district, moving it from largely east Topeka, Lecompton, and northwest Lawrence.
So you're running against, I guess there is no such thing as an incumbent in this district.
There's no incumbent.
You're running
Well, wait a minute.
in the primary.
Vic's an incumbent from politics.
He's an incumbent legislator. He's on
Right.
the House. He is running for this seat that in this newly created 19th district.
Right.
And he's been around for so long that he's sort of a de facto.
Almost 50 years.
He's sort of a de facto incumbent.
I would take issue with that description.
Okay. How would you describe?
Well, it's an open seat.
Okay, it's an open seat.
It's an open seat, and the seats in Kansas and anywhere in the United States don't belong to anyone but the voters in that district. And I really think that we owe it to the voters and we owe it to ourselves to really compete for these seats. And these elections, no election is about the past. It's about where do we want Kansas to be going? Where do we want the 19th State Senate District? Where do we want Topeka and Lawrence to be going? And, I've sure met a lot of people and knocking doors for the last, 3 years now that really want to see some changes made. And
It's time to take the car keys away from him.
some people have suggested that. Some people have suggested that. Yeah.
Well, so what is your assessment? Obviously, you wouldn't be in the race if you didn't think you could win. But how do you break it down in terms of two things? A, the primary, and B, the general.
Well, I'm going to take that in reverse order.
Okay.
Unfortunately, every district in Kansas is gerrymandered right now. And when the Republicans in the state legislature drew these maps, they were specifically trying to disenfranchise minority and Democratic voters in the state of Kansas. And Democrats and minorities in Topeka, Lawrence, and Wyandotte bore the brunt of that discrimination. And we saw in Wyandotte that they cut the county in half at the federal level.
Right. Yes.
Disenfranchising the voters in Wyandotte County. They plucked Lawrence, Kansas, out of the second congressional district. If they had left it, Kansas too would probably be a Democratic held congressional district. And in this case, this is a 72% Democratic state Senate district. I don't think that's a good thing because it disenfranchises the voters in Topeka because we should have more competitive seats for both Democrats and Republicans. And if we had just a few more Democrats from the 19th move south into the 3rd, we could have two very competitive congressional districts.
Into
Or,
the-
sorry, two competitive state senate districts.
When you're talking about the third, is that a state senate district or is that the congressional district?
It's the state senate district.
Okay, who is the state senator in that district now?
Well,
Or is there one?
Rick Cluse is currently the senator in the 19th state senate district, but because of the vicissitudes of redistricting,
It's a catchy word.
he's now running to be the senator in the third district.
But he actually lived in what is now the third district, so he hasn't moved. They just moved the district lines and moved him in a different place.
And I think you will notice that for the vast majority of incumbents in the legislature right now in 2024, redistricting served their interests, not the interests of the state of Kansas and making more competitive districts or yes, making more competitive districts.
You're suggesting that some of these state legislators would actually put their own interests ahead of the welfare of the citizens? Shocking. I am shocked.
Well, I think I have a lot of, I start off every conversation at the door with what's most important for you and your family? What's important for you guys in the legislature? And I usually get a range of 5 to 6 responses. Property taxes, protecting women's rights, expanding Medicaid, figuring out how to support your family, finding childcare, child tax credit. But I think, unfortunately, what we have in the state legislature right now is a supermajority that is antagonistic and hostile to the things that would help the most people in the state of Kansas. And I think if you go to Southeast Kansas, and if you go to Fort Scott, and if you go to Topeka, and if you go to Lawrence, all those people are going to benefit from Medicaid expansion. We've had hospital closures all across the state. We have hospitals in this state senate district that are basically being forced to perform charity work because we have failed to expand Medicaid.
And Medicaid, I'll just jump in here real quick. Is it not true that Oklahoma has voted to expand Medicaid? The most Republican state in the country, probably. Is it not true that we are surrounded by states, all 4 borders that have expanded Medicaid?
I think that's true.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna throw something else out here. My military experience really helps me think about, at the end of the day, why this is so important.
What rank were you in the Navy?
Well, I'm still in the Navy Reserves.
Okay.
I'm a lieutenant in the Navy Reserves, and I've served on board the USS Ronald Reagan in the Middle East, the Office of Naval Intelligence, and the Pentagon.
And that's a carrier, right?
I was on a carrier for a little over 2 years. Yep.
That's like a city, a floating city.
It's like a floating city, but the catch that you can never go home. You're always at work. With jets taking off above your head. In my case, my stateroom was directly below the flight deck, below the catapult, which just sounds like when they launch.
That's all right. I got this in God's storehouse.
But
I like this guy.
Imagine a sledgehammer.
Now we have a special effects version of Facebook Live
Yeah.
going on. Senate candidate Patrick Schmidt, former Speaker Mayor Joan Wagner.
He's
in the
putting his
Glass House
fist
studio
down on this
on Facebook
election.
Live. Yeah.
Out with the old, in with the new.
So right now in the state of Kansas, only 20% of people 17 to 25 are eligible to serve in the military.
Why is that?
Metabolic health,
Okay.
can't pass the entrance exams, physical health, mental health, drug use, criminal history.
Well, that's kind of depressing.
Well, I think, we just had the 80th anniversary of D-Day.
Right.
And if that had been the case 80 years ago when Kansans were going over the beach in Higgins boats, we really would have been up shit creek. And
Higgins boats, are those the ones?
Right. And, right now we've got 2 wars going on all across the world. We're trying to prevent a third in the Pacific. And it's a national security issue. It's an economic issue, right? If we're not it's a good proxy for how healthy is our workforce, how
There you
attractive
go. Yeah.
how attractive are Kansas workers, young Kansas workers, to employers that might be looking to expand or relocate to Kansas.
That's a sobering statistic.
And it's downstream of the failures of public health and public education in the state of
Gotcha.
Kansas. And my parents were educators. My dad taught elementary school for 50 years until the day he died, and my mom taught for 46.
Wow.
Um,
What
And where
like
was
what grades were they?
or
They-
where and where?
so they taught in Kansas City, but they taught elementary for their entire careers. I know they
Most
bounce around.
important,
Right, but when for most of my life, my dad taught fourth, and my mom taught sixth.
My mom was a school teacher. She
So-
had to teach school after she got a divorce. She started off in high school, but got down to 5th and 6th grade.
Yeah.
The formidable years.
You always talk about being a sixth generation Kansas.
Yep.
Your family started out where?
So let me get all the greats right. Great grandfather got out of the volunteer Pennsylvania 7th Cavalry and settled in southeast Kansas in the 1860s, and he mined coal. And
Where was a coal mine in Kansas?
Crawford and Cherokee County.
Oh, Southeast.
Southeast
Okay,
Kansas,
yeah, yeah,
Big coal production
right.
until it petered out.
Yeah,
Yep,
okay.
until it ran out in I think the 50s, 60s.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there was an old boy down there named Josiah
I've heard of him.
who was, you're
Papa Joe.
Papa Joe, bringing back, I should have known that, but I forgot that he got his start in unionizing. But yeah, keep going.
When did you all move north?
So my mom was born in Pittsburgh, Kansas, in a house on Olive Street, and then they moved to Kansas City when she was in elementary school.
What
KCK.
part? KCK?
Overland Park.
Oh, OP.
Okay,
Yeah.
When
and,
it was a tiny town.
right. So I guess actually it was probably Prairie Village. They moved to Prairie Village at that time. Because her mom, my grandmother, was an elementary school teacher.
well, so this is a little off the subject, but
Okay.
it's on the subject.
Sure.
You're somebody with deep Kansas roots going back to the 19th century. Your family's always been in Kansas. You've always been in Kansas, but because of your military experience, you've been all around the world as well.
Right.
So you're kind of a cosmopolitan cat. What?
Only Army people would say that about the Navy.
But what in all seriousness, in your mind, makes Kansas the desirable place for people to be? And as a member of the Kansas Senate, how are you going to enhance that?
Well, we have the potential to have some of the lowest cost of living combined with the highest quality of primary, secondary, and college level education. We're blessed with an amazingly talented workforce as the product of these universities. Huge capital pools. And I think we should be doing everything we can to take advantage of that and maximize that, especially as people are battling with cost of living issues all across the country. And I think, going back to the point that I was making about our youngest workforce, these are not, we are making, I think the best thing you could say is very penny wise and pound foolish decisions. Failing to expand Medicaid, for example, is costing the state over $800 million a year of Kansas taxpayer dollars. And let's just look at a few different streams in that expansion. Would include tens of millions of dollars for mental health care treatment, tens of millions of dollars for substance abuse treatment. I hear people, talk to me out sincere concern about issues around people without, homeless issues around Topeka. Well, if we had Medicaid expansion, it would open up whole new funding lines to get those people the treatment they need. And I think I've met enough people, I've met enough people in my campaign that have gone through something like that in their lives, they've been on food stamps. They struggle with addiction, drug or alcohol. They were homeless for a while. Shoot, my neighbor in Central Park was homeless for a while after he left the army. He served in the army for over 16 years. Had a rough go of it after that. Got divorced. Life happened. Um, but he's back on his feet now, and dang it if he's not raising all of his grandkids. Dang it if he's not one of the I see him at home, and I see him on my sometimes twice daily trips to Home Depot, where he works in the lumber department. So I just think we could be doing a lot more with investments in the issues that we know we have. We all agree that we have, and addressing those that would substantially increase the quality of life in Topeka and Kansas, and have a huge return on those dollars invested.
And when you're out campaigning, do you hear a lot about expanding Medicaid, or what issues do you actually hear the most about? And what do you think someone could have done more to maybe work for expanding Medicaid?
I do hear a lot about expanding Medicaid, and I think I don't think I hear enough of people talking about what it's really going to take to expand Medicaid. We need to win seats in the Kansas legislature to expand Medicaid. Right now, Republicans have a supermajority, which means if they all stand in line, stand together, which Republicans are good at doing, they can override the governor's veto. They can shut things down in committee. They can beat it on the floor. Right now, there are 20 seats in the House and 6 seats in the Kansas Senate that Governor Kelly carried in her reelection in 2022. We need to be winning those seats to advance the issues like Medicaid expansion in the state of Kansas.
Can we laser focus in on 2 days ago when you were knocking on doors? You told me about 4 really good door knocks. What happened?
Can you help me?
Yeah, I can help you. Where you were able to get a vote and change a sign.
So I know there's been a lot of people have asked me about yard signs in the last couple of weeks, and I've learned a few things. There are a lot of that's a very good yard sign.
Well, I built that.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. There are a lot of yard signs in Topeka right now. I think that some other people in this race placed without permission. There are a lot of those signs from one of those campaigns in Republican and unaffiliated yards. And, it's really helped me identify as I'm canvassing, who I need to talk to or maybe talk to again. But every day I get people that say, yeah, they're happy to get rid of one sign and take mine. And I'm more than happy to oblige. And I think the other day when we spoke, I think the first 4 people that I talked to had signs from another candidate, and we're happy to exchange those for Patrick Schmidt signs.
Well, what's more important is getting the vote.
Right.
The signs are, that's great.
Right.
But it's all one vote at a time.
That's true. And I'm sure glad that we started knocking doors, I think April 1st, which has really given us time to work the district, advance the issues, and get a really full understanding of this is a very diverse district. Ward Mead to Highland Park to Lecompton and Northwest Lawrence. There's a lot of different people going through a lot of different life experiences, and it does take a while to figure out how to address all those issues in a meaningful way, but also establish some sort of consensus and can communicate that message.
Well, what I like about you is your age, and I think it's time that more young people start getting involved, because this is going to be your time, and it's more important that and it's so important for everybody to make this area or the state the life we want to live. Right. So I admire that, and I appreciate you jumping in.
Oh, thank you. I mean, when I originally ran, filed in 2021, I really felt, well, I saw the attack on the Capitol. I was there. while I was stationed in Washington, D.C.
In the Pentagon.
in the Pentagon.
I read your note.
And I thought, oh, what can I do? I really feel, after seeing this, and it really did shake me. I thought, here's a district, Kansas too, that's been on the competitive list for congressional Democrats, came within 0.8% when Paul Davis ran in 2020, and Governor Kelly carried it by 8 points in 2018. And I thought I would work on that campaign. And no one was going to run. No one was going to run. And, we didn't get the outcome we were hoping for. But if I'm proud of anything that we were able to accomplish in that campaign, if you look at Kansas and the electoral results in 2022, there were 33 counties in the state that got more Democratic turnout compared to 2020. 25 of them were in Kansas too. So that's counties from Nebraska to Missouri to Oklahoma, almost all the way to Wichita. And we turned out a higher percentage of Democrats than them in all but a couple of counties. And I really think that that's what we need to be talking about. How do we expand the map for Democrats in Kansas? And I'm going to throw a little bit more math at you.
I love math.
Yeah.
Numbers guy.
If you look at Kansas state house race results, uncontested Republicans in the state of Kansas get 2 to 3 times as many votes in their races as uncontested Democrats.
Do that again.
You got a Republican
Right.
running in a state house race in Kansas.
Right.
There's 125 state house districts.
Okay.
They will frequently receive 2 to 3 times as many votes as a district where a Democrat is running uncontested. And that, unfortunately, is the complacency that has led to that, is how we reelect Governor Kelly, but also elect Attorney General Chris Kobach. And if we can increase turnout, if we can be more competitive in all of these races, we could see a significant change in the state of Kansas. And especially in the first places you could see it is in the state legislature. And that's what's going to get you the seats for things like expanding Medicaid.
Well, when you talk about the state legislature, you've got the primary,
Right.
in which you're running in your own party.
Right.
But then in the general, you've got a pretty large number of independents, don't you, that you have to reach?
Yes, but I think that the 2022 results in this district are going to be indicative of what we expect in the general. Governor Kelly carried this state Senate district, the 19th, with 72%.
Oh, she did.
She did.
Interesting. Well, it does seem, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me like, getting into the Kansas legislature is kind of like trying to join Hell's Angels in the sense that
What?
I wouldn't know anything about either, I guess.
Well,
I
let
asked
me
the Hells
finish.
Angels one time. I said, "Is this like a full-time job?"
It may seem like, you want a club you want to be in, but, to get in that club, referring to Hell's Angels, you got to go kill somebody in a rival gang.
You don't know.
Well, I have people that tell me these things. No, but I'm just saying that once you're there, you're hanging around a lot of people whose values and, shall we say, mores are radically different from your own global experience, as not just a citizen of Kansas, but someone who's actually worked in the Pentagon and experienced some things beyond the limited perspective of somebody coming from someplace like Republic County who comes in here, they hate Topeka, they hate poor people, they hate government, they do not want to expand Medicaid. They don't want to do anything that takes the foot off the neck of the underprivileged and the mentally ill and the people who are having a hard time in life. They want women to be forced to carry babies to full term, even if they are the victims of rape and incest. So in my mind,
Is there a question in there?
Are you getting ready to run?
well, no, in my mind, here's where I'm going with this. Just as you had a criminal mindset in Hell's Angels, you get to join this motorcycle club, then you realize, oh, these guys are criminals. They want to kill people. They want to deal drugs. Well, in the state legislature, you have people who they're fine with poor people dying.
They are.
Or they're fine with women dying because they want to deny very fundamental services that could be easily extended to large swaths of the public. So I'm asking you, how do you see yourself interacting once you're a member of the club, so to speak? That's my question.
Fine.
Well, like all
It's
intelligent
like giving
questions.
birth.
Yeah.
I think I think that the function of the legislature still offers the path for some redemption here for the organization, for the body. But I also think that it's going to be helpful to get some new faces in there, because I think a lot of people in there are burdened by the way things have been done for the last 30, 40, 50 plus years. And I'm happy to have those conversations and try and communicate my experiences and the experiences of my district to the people that are in opposition to the things that would help the most people. But I also think I think as Democrats in Kansas, we're perhaps too conditioned to think "Mother May I" from the Republicans in the legislature.
There you go.
You start winning seats, things can start to change really quickly, and we might even learn that we like to win seats. And I think that combined with look at shoot, we had an expanded child tax credit in Kansas, or child care tax credit in Kansas for a couple of years there. And it was because of one guy that got elected out of Newton, Kansas, Tim Hodge, kept putting it up for a vote, kept putting it up for a vote, kept putting it up for a vote, forcing the Republicans to vote against childcare. That's not very popular. And that's what got it passed. So I think there's some persistence that I've learned from my life growing up, and certainly my work in the Navy, and some energy and the desire to actually win some seats here that could help us get some things done and advance the governor's agenda.
So I think there's one thing that he was trying to ask and didn't, is I think today that you've got a better shot at working with Rick Clues and Ty.
Yep.
A new face. One thing I've always liked about Joan, no, seriously, she doesn't care what party you're in. Hey, let's come to the middle. Let's talk about it.
Yep.
And that's what I'm enjoying about my new life, is talking to more people and learning, listening. And so I think you've got a better shot at being able to meet in the middle with the establishment that's in the Senate. I enjoyed as a kid paging in the Senate and learning. I think that's when I got addicted to government, being a kid and watching the whole process.
And we have that in common.
Yeah. Well, and also 6 generations. I got that. And that was cool. I liked your piece in the Oakland Express. But I think what your party needs to understand, or voters, let's just put it that way, that it's time for, if it's not working today, don't send the guy back.
Yeah.
that's there. So maybe change is good no matter what. And yeah, you've got some good qualities. You got a great background. The military background I really admire. And don't, before you leave, you got to touch the Harry Comrie desk here. So,
Roger that.
yeah, but so I think what voters, whatever party it is, no matter what, it's putting new young people in place. And I want to wish you luck. I'm not trying to sign off on the show, but you make a good presentation, and guys like Rick Clues and Ty, they need to. I think they get along better with you than they would one of your suspected opponents.
I just want to make a comment. Having served 12 years in the Kansas legislature from 1983 to 1994, the people who wrote the Kansas Constitution believed, number one, it ought to be a citizen legislature, that it comes and it brings and reflects the concerns of your neighborhood, the concerns of your constituency. And the second thing, that they thought that you would not stay forever. This is not a sinecure that you get elected to and you get to stay for all the rest of your life. And so in that regard, passing the torch is an important thing. I stayed 12 years and I thought that was enough, because it was time for somebody else who thought perhaps differently about ideas to come behind me. And so we passed the torch the next time to a Republican and then back to a Democrat. But you get together and you learn that compromise is the way you get things done. Compromise is the way that you take a little of this from that person and a little of that from the other person, put them together, and you've got something that you can agree with. What's happening right now in the legislature is that compromise is a dirty word. And the ability to work together across the aisle is almost non-existent. That was not the case 15 years ago. And it started drifting that way. And when you get things out of balance, there you have too many Democrats or too many Republicans or not enough of each. You don't have a balance of thought, and that compromise doesn't happen. And I think you'd ask anybody that's served in the legislature or been the governor, they'll tell you the same thing. You need that balance of power. And what we're trying to do now is elect a broad, diverse group of people. I'm backing Patrick because I think he's the right guy. I'm backing Patrick because I think he's a young guy and he's got some new ideas. He's got a lot to learn when he gets there. But there are people who will help you with that. And he's made a stake in central Topeka buying a house in an area that most people are ready to write off.
Now, that's an interesting point.
Because I think it is, and pardon the listeners.
You got water.
I got water. It's just chronically there. He's bought a house in an area and he's willing to work on building that neighborhood. And that's the whole foundation of how government works, is you get your neighbors involved and you get a cross current of ideas. And I think that's what Patrick will do. And so I just wanted to say that.
Another thing we've got in common, that neighborhood.
Yep.
But this is a very important moment right here. The backing of Joan. And I was at the bank the other day and seeing Jim Slattery, John Carlin, Larry Walgast, others. That was a really cool moment. And now to have Laura Kelly. And this is one thing I like about the Democratic Party is, and I loathe about the Republican Party. I don't know how the Republicans can't endorse somebody during the primary. It's wrong. It's completely wrong. And I admire the rally that you've got behind you. You've got all the heavy hitters behind you, and it's cool. It says a lot. It speaks volumes for change. And so it's easier to sit back and say, well, hey, look, I've done this. I've been involved with this. You're Secretary of Revenue, a lot of experience. And for her to come out and say, I'm backing Patrick for a lot of reasons. And you've got you've got a great resume of backing.
Oh, I appreciate it. I'm very fortunate, very blessed to have a lot of help. You omitted my wife, Megan Walden, who's, I would be remiss if I didn't say she was my number one supporter in helping me think how to do this, help me, not say dumb things.
Man, I need to get a wife then.
We've tried that.
Oh man, I gave it a shot. 15-year one-night stand.
That ship has sailed and sank. Yeah.
I'll let you touch that, not me. It's great to have all this encouragement, but it also wasn't overnight. I think we worked really hard in 2021 and 2022, and I think that was when we started engaging people in Topeka, Lawrence, and really all across the state in a way that they hadn't been engaged in a campaign in a long time. And so I think there's no overnight success here. It's just been a lot of work, a lot of pounding the pavement, and that's what it's going to take to move forward and make this successful.
So out of all the places you could have lived after the Pentagon, whatever, and everywhere,
right?
Why'd you pick Topeka?
Well, I've spent more time in Topeka than anywhere else in the world since I commissioned. And in the Navy, as soon as you get somewhere, you're going somewhere else. And I was on a carrier based out of Japan that really pulled out. If we were in port, we were pulling out in the next 2 to 4 weeks. And a lot of so for a lot of those 2 years, I barely saw my family, barely saw my wife. And when I got off active duty, came to Topeka, have family here, have roots here, and this is where I've been since 2021. And the people here, the people in this community, really took me in. People like Joan. I've had 2 neighbors now that one was Army, one was Air Force. Nobody's perfect. That really took me and my wife in, and I didn't want to keep trying to do this after their encouragement.
All right. Well, we're I don't know how long we've been on. It's your show.
Okay.
Anything you want to talk about? I mean,
anything we haven't gotten into.
Because if he asks another question, we're here another hour.
I'm really blessed and humbled by everything that has happened in this campaign, and grateful for all the support. And I think with everything that's going on right now in Kansas and all across the country, I hope people understand the role the legislature can play in not only providing stability, but tangible material pocketbook benefits for the people in Topeka and Lawrence. And
yeah, I mean, the state legislature controls so much of your life that you don't see. We control how our schools work and how well we fund them. So when a candidate tells you they're pro-education and then they vote against raising the base pay or the base reimbursement for school districts, they're not really pro-education. And so I know for a fact, with Patrick's family having been teachers, and that has been ingrained in you, and you grew up struggling, I think, because they lived on what, 2 teachers' salaries?
2 teachers' salaries in the Brownback era when their healthcare benefits were getting cut, and meanwhile, my dad's got heart disease, neurological issues, a whole litany of things that really made it impossible for them to raise 2 kids and own their own house.
So that's the kind of thing that the legislature impacts. You don't see it every day, but I think how we fund schools, how we fund our roads, how we encourage businesses to come, those are all decisions that the legislature makes that impact individuals, but they don't know how to identify. Oh, you know that, Henry, because you remember when we closed the planning commission down.
Oh man,
in the
and
city.
I'll never forget that we had a metropolitan planning commission, and actually blown up by Vic Miller. And that was that's been the worst thing that's ever happened to this community, ever.
But it's hard for people just going about their daily lives to say, oh, that's who caused that, or that's the issue that's a problem. So I think the legislature has huge impact. And if you have the right people sitting there, they can listen to your concerns. One of the concerns I used to hear was my husband, ex-husband's not paying his child support, but the legislature was able to take care of that. And so it's the ability to translate into policy the concerns of your community is what you're looking for to vote for somebody. And I think that's what you can do. Translate community concerns into the public policy that makes us move forward. That's what we do.
I've
And
got one. I hate to chime in because that was a great closing.
that was,
I can't
I
top
know.
that.
I
yeah,
can't either. But let's talk about school. You know, I think one of the worst things that happened with Black Flight after Brown versus Board of Education, and I want to know if there's any way we could fix this. How could we go to, let's say, Shawnee County, that we have one administration for the school boards? You leave all the school boards in place, so you got your public involvement. Is there a way to, so if you had less administrators, teachers could get more money? Is there a way to fix that?
maybe we should bring Tiffany Anderson in sometime on the Topeka faculty
Yeah.
to discuss that.
Consolidating 5 school districts into one.
Administrations,
I understand. But
just
that's-
the administrative.
That's what you're doing.
Is that impossible?
It's politically not possible right now.
I like deals
Well,
like that.
But consolidating city and county government is possible if you have the right people
Yeah,
on
as
the
long
county commission.
as the county, and you got to have 7 people.
But
I'd like to see the
people don't
sheriff.
like to give up their power. And so that's why those consolidation efforts, I've proposed that for years.
Well, as I said, either on the first show or the last, but we gotta, I'm willing to give up power. I don't want to be the treasurer. Let the treasurer do his job. Okay, so we're getting into local politics. We're a little in the weeds, but it does affect you
Sure.
personally as a taxpayer.
Right.
And
Who was your city council person?
Karen Heller.
Yeah, it occurs to me when we talk about schools, and Joan, you've been in the state legislature, so I'm sure you saw this. My heart goes out to these people in, say, extreme Western Kansas. So you take a town like, say, Meade, and these little towns, they've all had their high schools, and then suddenly, not suddenly, but over a long period of time, because they're losing population, they really don't have the population base to support a school district. But of course, they feel like, okay, well, if you shut down the high school, that's one more thing that disappears from our city, from our town, and pretty soon we got a ghost town here. And so how do you deal with that?
Well, they're all very much afraid of that. And that's been going on. And it was one of the arguments in 92 when we changed the school finance formula that are they going to be able to keep the tiny, small districts? And the truth is that economics drive that, not the legislature. And we have had consolidation of school districts from 312, which we had in 92 when we passed school finance, down to around 279, I think. So over time, the number of districts is shrinking. Where it doesn't shrink is in urban areas.
Well, we kind of have, and you'll run into this as a state senator. It's almost like we have 2 states anymore.
Rural.
We've got this vast rural expanse, which starts probably around Junction City and goes west. And then we've got all these areas of metropolitan areas, you might call them, or just cities, Topeka, Lawrence, and of course Johnson County, and as well as Wyandotte County. And there's not necessarily a real commonality of interest there, but maybe there is.
I've been struck at some of the commonality of issues that are facing these communities, though, in terms of economic opportunity, in terms of food deserts, dealing with substance abuse and homelessness. That is not, neither of these are specifically urban or rural issues anymore. And so I think when it comes to addressing these issues statewide, there is an opportunity there with a lot of those conversations.
Okay. Well,
I am going to have to excuse myself.
okay,
I am going to have to leave. And
Okay, but I
go.
thank you for being on the
Yeah.
show. It was nice to have you in. You're
Thanks for having
welcome.
me.
Yeah, you're welcome to the studio anytime.
I won't beat up on your table next time.
No, you can. It's fine. I got it at God's storehouse. You're taking it out on a Republican. Think about that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. It was
Henry
fun.
McClure Live. Hey, Rick, we love you. I do.
Wrapping it up for my Facebook Live, reporting from the Glass House Studios. We've been talking with State Senate candidate Patrick Schmidt, as well as former Speaker Mayor and former Revenue Secretary Joan Wagner. I'd almost forgotten about that. Was that Sebelius?
Yeah, I worked for her for 8 years.
And she's living in Lawrence now. So
Uh-huh.
is she in your district or do you know?
No.
She's not my district.
Okay.
Mark
Uh,
Cardullo loves you.
Oh, I know.
Hey, Mark.
Mr. C.
So
Mr. C.
we will
right, I
see
love
y'all
you
real
guys.
soon. That's going to be concluding the big broadcast for today from the Glass House